All right, so let's do an example here using intercepts to graph a line. So we've got to graph 3x minus 4y equals 12. So what's the solution? Well, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to solve this equation and we're going to have to solve it for y. Now, when we do that, that's just going to make it so we have to solve, and it's going to have some division by negatives and things like that, but it's not going to be an issue. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to say, let's rewrite it. 3x minus 4y equals 12. So let's subtract 3x from both sides. So a minus 4y equals a minus 3x plus 12. Now we'll divide by negative 4. And so then y is equal to, well, negative divided by negative is positive, so it's going to be 3/4 x, and 12 divided by that's going to be a negative 3. Okay, so that's going to be what we have for our equation. Now we can find our intercepts. So if we plug in x is equal to 0, what do we get for y? Well, if we plug in x is equal to 0 here, we get negative 3. Now, the other one that we could do is if we plug in 0 for y. So if we plug in 0 for y here, what do? Well, we're going to do a little bit more work here. So now we'll add 3 to both sides. And so we'll get 3 equals 3/4 x. Solve for x, multiply by 4/3. And so those cancel, we get x is equal to 4 because everything on this side cancels out. And so we get a 4. Now, what we can do now is choose some other point. It doesn't really matter what point. Let's choose, I don't know, how about let's choose x is equal to, I don't know, what's going to be an easy one if we do, let's do 8. Only reason I say 8 is because if I take 4, divide it in by 8, that's going to be an easy way to do it. So if we use 8, we have y equals 3/4 times 8 minus 3. Here we can reduce, so 3 times 2 is going to be 6 minus 3, and that's going to be 3. Okay, so those are going to be our points. Okay, so we have 2 intercepts and 1 point kind of outside of that range. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go plot it, and we're going to hopefully remember our numbers again. So 0, -3, let's write them over here. I think we had 4, 0, and 8, 3. All right, so 0 minus 3. So 0 minus 3. 1, 2, 3. We've got a point here. 4, 0. So we'll have that point. And 8, 3. So the 8, 1, 2, 3. And now freehanding is going to not look so good, but it's going to be something like that. And if we look at it, it looks like it's pretty much in a straight line. It doesn't look like there's anything off. Usually what happens if you have one arm off, this one might, instead of here, you might have had something up here, and then you have a point here and here, and you've drawn that line, and then you have this point over here, and it doesn't make sense. So you've done either this one or this one wrong, or maybe this one. So you have to go back in and check all your points to see what you have. So that's kind of how looking for 3 points, make sure you do have the correct line and make sure it's linear. All right, so now if we remember, we just did that equation already, and we're going to do it instead on a graphing calculator to find the intercepts. And so what we can do is to do it on a graphing calculator, we again, 3x minus 4y equals 12, we have to solve for y. So subtract 3x, so minus 4y equals minus 3x plus 12, and so we have y is equal to 3/4 x minus, and that's going to be a 3. Okay, and so with that said, now what we can do is we can go to our graphing calculator. So let's go and share a calculator. All right, hopefully that works. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to type that same equation into our calculator. So first we go up here to y equals, and if you have anything here, clear it out. But if you don't, we can go ahead and start typing. So now, if we remember, we had 3 divided by 4, and then it's x, and then we had minus 3. Okay, so that should be our equation. You can put a times here, you could not put a times here. It shouldn't matter how we do it, but that should give us our equation. And so now the only key thing is we have to think about a window next. Here we have pretty wide margins. We could probably narrow them because if we look at this, we know the intercept is a -3. So maybe instead of having -25, we could do -10 to 10. Let's go by 2. We could do a -10. Oops. Wrong button. -10 to 10 by 2. And now if we go to graph, hopefully we're going to see the graph that looks similar to what we had before. Why do I have a syntax error? Did I type a dig? Oh, I deleted my 3. How'd that happen? 3 divided by 4. All right, so there's our graph. Okay, and so what we were supposed to do, I said, is find the intercept. So we want to find this point here, and we want to find this point here. All right, so several ways to do that. First one is easy. We can use our x one because we know at this point we need to find x equals 0. So we're going to use second trace, and we want a value, and we want to have it at x equals 0. So we type 0. And that says -3. So 0, -3 is going to be the y-intercept. Now, what about the x-intercept? Well, that one's going to be a little different because instead of using the second value, we're going to do the second 0. Okay. And so we want to round the 0. So what we want to do is we want to be the left bound to the one side of the intercept, and the right bound is going to be to the right side of the intercept. So we'll start there and say that's the left. And then we'll go over here and say, okay, that's the right. And you don't have to be exact. You can just be close. And then I'm just going to hit enter for guess. And it says 40 is going to be my x-intercept where it hits that x-axis. Okay. Now, in some cases, it's going to be a different way you could do it. You can just hit trace and you can arrow around and see what it is. So this one actually works. It gives you 0, -3. Now, does it work going this direction though? And that one, see, doesn't work quite so well. It gets you close, and close isn't going to help us really as far as because we need this to be exactly 0. And so that's where you're going to actually have to use that 0 function. So sometimes you're going to have to use the 0 and the value. Sometimes you can just use the trace and arrow around, and it tells you, okay, well, x equals 0, which is what we need, then we get the -3. So those are kind of some functions that we can use for our calculator. All right, so let's see here. Let's go back to our PowerPoint slide. And so we've taken it, again, we had to solve it for y equals, then we can do all that other work in there, and that gets us everything we need. So that's how to use your calculator to plot a line. And we'll come back for some more in a little bit.